Right now, in this exact microsecond, your brain is electric. Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally electric. Tiny bolts of voltage are leaping across the gaps between your neurons, roughly 86 billion of them, cascading in waves that ripple from the front of your skull to the back and then forward again, endlessly, tirelessly, even now as you listen to the sound of this voice. Imagine a vast, dark ocean stretching out in every direction, and beneath its surface, lightning. Not one bolt, but billions, firing in rolling chains that light up the deep like a storm seen from orbit. That ocean is you. That electricity is the sound of your mind, thinking, feeling, being alive. And like any ocean, it has tides. But here is what almost no one tells you. Right now, your tide is probably too fast. Feel it for a moment. That hum beneath your thoughts. That low-grade tension sitting behind your eyes or clenched in your jaw. The list that never ends. The thing you forgot to do. The message you haven't answered. The dull, buzzing sense that your mind is spinning just a little too quickly for your body to keep up. There is a name for that feeling. Neuroscientists call it high beta, a brainwave frequency cycling between 15 and 30 times every single second. It is the electrical signature of vigilance, of anxiety, of a mind locked in scan mode, searching for threats that may not even exist. It is useful in small doses. It kept your ancestors alive on the savannah. But in you, tonight, it has overstayed its welcome. It is a frequency running on a loop, and your nervous system has forgotten how to change the channel. But there are other channels, slower ones, deeper ones. Hidden just beneath that frantic chatter is an entire spectrum of consciousness you rarely visit while awake. Think of your mind as a radio dial. High beta is the static end, all noise and urgency. But turn the dial down, gently, and you pass through alpha, 8 to 12 hertz, the frequency of calm awareness, the bridge state where your thoughts soften and your body begins to release its grip. Keep turning. You enter theta, 4 to 8 hertz, the frequency of dreams, of deep meditation, the strange and fertile borderland where memory consolidates and creativity moves like smoke through an open window. And then, further still, below even the dream line, there is delta, 0.5 hertz to 4 hertz, the slowest rhythm your brain can produce, the void, the deep, the place where conscious thought dissolves entirely and your body initiates its most profound repair. Cell regeneration, immune restoration, the flushing of metabolic waste from neural tissue. Delta is not just sleep, it is medicine. What if you could shift between these gears as easily as turning that dial? What if the descent from chaos to silence was not something that happened to you randomly, but something you could learn to initiate deliberately tonight? Here is the key. You are not just waiting for sleep. You have never been just waiting. Sleep is not a passive collapse. It is a biological command, an ancient electrical instruction that your brainstem issues to your cortex, pulling it down through each frequency band like a diver sinking through layers of warm, dark water. And the remarkable thing, the thing that changes everything, is that this process can be guided from the outside. Neuroscientists call it neural entrainment. When your brain is exposed to a rhythmic external stimulus, a specific tone, a pattern of sound, a steady pulse, its own electrical rhythms begin to synchronize with that stimulus. The neurons fall into step, not because they are forced, but because synchronization is what neurons do. It is their deepest instinct. The right signal, delivered at the right frequency, can literally pull your cortex out of its anxious loop and into a slower, deeper, more restorative rhythm. Sound becomes a kind of gravity, and your brainwaves follow it down. Tonight, that is exactly what we are going to do. We are going to travel down the Hertz scale together, step by step, frequency by frequency. We are going to slow down the lightning in your skull until it is no longer a storm but a pulse, no longer a pulse but a glow, no longer a glow but a single, soft, rolling wave moving through the deepest architecture of your mind. You do not need to try. You do not need to force anything. Your nervous system already knows this path. It has walked it every night of your life. We are simply going to light the way. So settle in. Let your breath slow without forcing it. And listen now, not with your ears, but with your neurons. Let the sound reach past your thoughts, past your awareness, into the electrical fabric of your brain itself. Somewhere beneath the noise, beneath the lists, beneath the tension you have been carrying like a stone in your chest, there is a frequency that feels like home. A deep, slow silence your brain has been trying to return to all day. It knows the way. It has always known the way. It is just waiting for the right signal. Let's begin the descent. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly, not out loud, just to yourself, in the privacy of your own skull. When was the last time your mind was truly quiet, not distracted, not numbed, not occupied with a screen or a task or a conversation? Quiet, still, like a lake at dawn with no wind and no ripple and nothing moving beneath the surface. If you cannot remember, that is not a personal failing. That is a symptom. And tonight, we are going to understand exactly what it is a symptom of. Right now, as you lie here, your brain is producing electricity. This is not a metaphor. Your neurons, somewhere in the range of 86 billion of them, are communicating through tiny electrochemical pulses, voltage spikes that leap across synaptic gaps and cascade through neural networks in rhythmic waves. These waves have frequencies, measurable oscillations per second, and those frequencies have names. The one that concerns us tonight, the one that is most likely dominating your cortex at this very moment, is called beta. Beta brainwave cycle between 12 and 30 times per second. That is 12 to 30 hertz. And within that range lies both the engine of human achievement and the trap that keeps millions of people staring at their ceilings at 2 in the morning, exhausted but wired, desperate for rest but unable to reach it. Here is what most people never learn. Beta is not one thing. It is a spectrum. At the lower end, between roughly 12 and 15 hertz, you find low beta. This is the frequency of focused attention, of clear-headed work, of a surgeon making an incision or a writer finding the right word. Low beta is useful. It is precise. It is the hum of a well-tuned engine cruising at the speed it was designed for. Your prefrontal cortex, that remarkable sheet of neural tissue sitting just behind your forehead, operates beautifully in low beta. It plans, it sequences, It weighs options and makes decisions with a kind of calm authority. This is the version of your thinking mind that you trust, the one that feels like you at your best. But now move up the dial. 15 hertz, 20, 25, 30. As the frequency increases, something changes. The hum becomes a whine. The cruise becomes a sprint. Welcome to high beta. And this is where the trouble begins. High beta is the frequency of anxiety, of hypervigilance, of the mind that will not stop scanning, sorting, predicting, catastrophizing. It is the electrical signature of a brain that believes on some deep and primal level that it is in danger. Not the kind of danger you can see or name or fight. Something vaguer, something that lives in the background like a tone you cannot quite hear, but that sets your teeth on edge. In high beta, your thoughts do not flow. They loop. You replay conversations. You rehearse arguments that may never happen. You build elaborate mental models of worst-case scenarios and then stress test them over and over again. Not because you want to, but because your brain has decided that stopping would be reckless. That vigilance is the only thing standing between you and disaster. And here is the mechanism. Deep in the center of your brain, buried beneath the cortex in a region called the temporal lobe, sit two small almond-shaped structures called the amygdalae. The amygdala is your brain's threat detection system. It is ancient, fast, and blunt. It does not think, it reacts. When it perceives danger, real or imagined, it initiates what neuroscientists call an amygdala hijack. It seizes control of your neural resources and redirects them toward survival. Your prefrontal cortex, that calm and rational planner, gets overridden. It does not shut down entirely, but it gets conscripted. Instead of thinking creatively or solving problems or reflecting with any kind of depth, it is forced into a narrow, high-frequency loop of threat analysis. What could go wrong? What did go wrong? What might go wrong tomorrow? The amygdala does not care about your sleep schedule. It does not care that you are safe in your bed. It has detected a pattern that it interprets as threatening, maybe a financial worry, maybe a social conflict, maybe nothing more than the residual tension of a day spent absorbing too much information. And it has decided that the appropriate response is to keep the engine running at maximum speed until the threat is resolved. But the threat is not a predator. It is not a fire. It is an abstraction. And abstractions never resolve. So the engine keeps running. And while the amygdala holds the wheel, your body is flooded with chemistry designed for emergencies. Cortisol, the stress hormone, surges from your adrenal glands and saturates your bloodstream. Its job is to keep you alert, to maintain blood sugar levels for sustained fight or flight, to suppress any system that is not immediately essential for survival. Your immune response dips. Your digestive processes slow. Your capacity for rest is chemically inhibited. Alongside cortisol comes adrenaline, tightening your blood vessels, increasing your heart rate, sharpening your senses to a point that would be useful if you were being hunted, but is merely painful when you are lying in a dark room trying to fall asleep. This is not a malfunction. This is your body executing an ancient survival protocol with absolute precision. The problem is not that the system is broken. The problem is that it has been activated by the wrong signal, and no one has taught you how to turn it off. Now, let me tell you what activated it. Not tonight specifically, but chronically, structurally, as a condition of modern life. Consider, what your brain has processed today. Before you even left your bed this morning, you likely reached for a device that delivered more information in 5 minutes than your great-grandparents encountered in a week. Headlines designed to trigger urgency, notifications engineered to demand response, social media feeds built on algorithms that have learned, through billions of data points, that the single most effective way to keep a human brain engaged is to keep it slightly anxious. Every red badge on your phone is a tiny amygdala trigger. Every infinite scroll is a training session in sustained vigilance. Every blue light-saturated screen you stared at after sunset sent a direct signal to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master clock, telling it that the sun was still up and that sleep was not yet appropriate. You did not choose this. No one sat you down and asked whether you wanted your nervous system reprogrammed for chronic alertness. It happened incrementally, app by app, notification by notification, year by year, until the high beta state stopped feeling like a response to stress and started feeling like your personality, like who you are, the person who cannot relax, the person who lies awake, the person whose mind simply will not stop. But it is not who you are. It is a frequency, and frequencies can be changed. Think of it this way. Imagine a car engine, a powerful one, well-built, capable of extraordinary performance. Now imagine that engine is stuck in its highest gear, revving at maximum RPM, but the car is in neutral. It is not going anywhere. The wheels are not turning. There is no forward motion, but the engine is screaming, burning fuel at an extraordinary rate, generating heat that warps the metal and degrades the oil and wears down every component from the pistons to the gaskets. That is your brain in chronic high beta. It is consuming glucose and oxygen at a rate designed for short bursts of emergency cognition. But there is no emergency. There is no action to take. There is no predator to outrun. There is only the loop, the mental rehearsal, the scanning, and the cost of running that engine at redline without purpose is staggering. Feel it in your body right now. Notice your breathing. If you have been in a high beta state, and statistically most adults are by this hour of the night, your breath is likely shallow. It is sitting high in your chest, barely reaching below your ribs. Your diaphragm, that broad dome of muscle designed to pull air deep into the base of your lungs, has been sidelined. High beta breathing is survival breathing, fast and shallow, designed to keep oxygen available for muscles that might need to sprint. Your shoulders may be lifted slightly toward your ears. Your jaw may be clenched, perhaps so subtly that you did not notice until this moment. There is tension along the back of your neck, in your lower back, in places you have stopped registering because the tension has been there so long it has become invisible to you. This is the physiological signature of a brain running too fast. The body follows the mind, always. When the mind is in threat mode, the body armors itself. And there is a cognitive cost too, one that is perhaps even more insidious than the physical toll. In high beta, your brain cannot access its deeper capacities. Creativity requires a certain looseness of association, a willingness to let thoughts wander and connect in unexpected ways. Deep problem-solving requires the prefrontal cortex to work in concert with memory systems and emotional centers in a fluid, integrated fashion. But high beta fragments that integration. It narrows your cognitive field to a tunnel. You can see the threat, real or imagined, with extraordinary clarity. But you cannot see around it. You cannot see above it. You lose peripheral awareness, not just visually, but mentally. The big picture dissolves. Nuance disappears. Everything becomes urgent and nothing becomes important. You are surviving, moment to moment, thought to thought, and the tragedy is that there is nothing to survive. You are running from a sound that your own engine is making. So what do we do? How do we reach into the electrical architecture of our own cortex and slow the oscillation? How do we convince an amygdala that has been trained by 10,000 notifications and 100,000 headlines that it is safe, finally, to stand down? The answer begins with understanding that there is an exit ramp. It has been there your entire life. You have used it thousands of times, usually without knowing it. It is the transitional frequency that sits just below beta on the brainwave spectrum, and neuroscientists call it alpha. Alpha waves cycle between 8 and 12 hertz. They are slower, they are broader, and they represent something that high beta actively suppresses, a state of relaxed awareness where the mind is awake but not vigilant, present but not grasping. Alpha is the frequency your brain produces when you close your eyes and take a breath that is slightly deeper than the last one. It is the frequency of the first moment after you step outside and feel sunlight on your face, and for just a second, just a fraction of a second, your mental chatter drops away and there is only sensation, only presence. Alpha is not sleep. It is not unconsciousness. It is the bridge, the narrow, quiet bridge between the waking storm of beta and the deeper states of theta and delta that lie below, where true rest and restoration begin. And tonight, we are going to learn to find that bridge, not through force, not through willpower. Willpower is a beta tool, and it will only spin the engine faster. We are going to find it through something older and more fundamental, through rhythm, through breath, through the deliberate, gentle act of giving your brain a signal that it is safe to slow down. Your amygdala is listening. Even now, your nervous system is waiting for permission. And the remarkable truth, the one that changes everything once you truly understand it, is that the permission does not come from your thoughts. It comes from your body, from the depth of your breath, from the release of your jaw, from the softening of your eyes behind closed lids. The trap is real. The frequency is real. The cortisol in your bloodstream and the tension in your muscles and the loop playing in your mind, all of it is real. But it is not permanent. It is not who you are. It is a gear your brain is stuck in, and gears can be shifted. In the next chapter, we will cross the alpha bridge together. But for now, just notice. Notice the speed of your thoughts. Notice the rhythm of your breath. And know that the simple act of noticing, of stepping back from the storm just far enough to observe it, is itself the first downshift, the first gentle turn of the dial. Your brain is already listening. It is already beginning to respond. The descent has started, and you did not even have to try. You have taken the first step already. You may not have felt it. You may not have noticed the exact moment it happened. But somewhere between the last words of the previous chapter and the first breath you took afterward, something shifted. The engine slowed, even if only by a fraction. The dial turned, even if only by a degree. And now you are here, at the edge of something your brain does naturally, but that your modern life has taught you to skip over, to rush through, to ignore entirely. You are standing at the entrance to the Alpha Bridge. Let me tell you what Alpha is, precisely, because precision matters when you are learning the language of your own nervous system. Alpha brainwaves oscillate between 8 and 12 cycles per second, 8 to 12 hertz. That is roughly half the speed of the anxious high beta chatter we explored in the last chapter. And that difference, that simple halving of frequency, changes everything. Not just how you think, but how you feel, how you breathe, how your muscles hold or release tension, how your eyes move behind your lids, how your heart finds its rhythm. Alpha is not sleep. Let me be clear about that from the beginning. You are not losing consciousness. You are not drifting away. Alpha is awareness without effort. It is the state your brain enters when it finally, fully accepts that there is nothing to do, nothing to solve, nothing to scan for, and yet it remains present, awake, and quietly alert. Think of it as the difference between gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles on a crowded highway and resting your hands loosely on the wheel of a car moving down a long, empty road through open country. You are still driving. You are still aware. But the urgency has dissolved, and in its place is something spacious and unhurried and fundamentally at ease. There is a beautiful piece of neuroscience history embedded in this frequency band, and it begins with a German psychiatrist named Hans Berger. In 1924, Berger became the first person to record electrical activity from the surface of a living human brain. He placed electrodes on the scalp of his patients and watched, with a mixture of awe and scientific rigor, as a pen traced rhythmic waves across a moving strip of paper. The most prominent rhythm he discovered, the one that appeared most reliably and most dramatically, was alpha. And he noticed something remarkable about it. When his subjects sat with their eyes open, scanning the room, processing visual information, the alpha rhythm was suppressed. But the moment they closed their eyes, the moment the visual world was shut out, and the brain was freed from the relentless task of processing light and shape and motion, alpha surged. It bloomed across the occipital lobe, that region at the back of the skull devoted to vision, like a tide rolling in over dry sand. This phenomenon is now called the Berger effect, and nearly a century later, it remains one of the most reliable findings in all of neuroscience. Close your eyes, and your brain shifts frequency, not slowly, not gradually, almost immediately. The simple act of lowering your eyelids is one of the most powerful neurological switches your body possesses. Try it now if you have not already. Let your eyelids fall, not with effort, not squeezing them shut. Just let them close the way a door closes when you stop holding it open. Feel the weight of them resting, and notice what happens in the space behind your eyes. The visual static, those remnant patterns and flickers, begins to settle. The darkness is not empty. It is full of a different kind of awareness. Your occipital cortex, suddenly freed from the enormous computational burden of processing vision, which consumes roughly 30% of your brain's total resources, begins to idle. And in that idling, it produces alpha, wave after wave after wave, radiating forward through your cortex, like ripples spreading across still water. Now here is what is happening in your chemistry as this shift takes place. In high beta, your brain was bathed in norepinephrine, a neurotransmitter that functions essentially as a chemical alarm bell. Norepinephrine sharpens attention, narrows focus, and keeps the amygdala primed for rapid response. It is the chemistry of vigilance. As you cross into alpha, norepinephrine levels begin to decline. The alarm bell does not shut off entirely, but its volume drops. In its place, another neurotransmitter begins to rise in concentration: acetylcholine. This is a profoundly different chemical messenger. Acetylcholine promotes what neurologists describe as relaxed alertness. It facilitates the smooth, fluid transmission of signals between neurons without the urgency and constriction of the stress chemicals. It enhances memory consolidation. It supports the kind of broad, associative thinking that high beta actively prevents. If norepinephrine is the chemistry of the soldier, acetylcholine is the chemistry of the sage. And your brain is beginning to produce it right now, simply because you closed your eyes and gave yourself permission to stop scanning the world for threats. I want you to understand what this state actually is in the architecture of your mind, because it is more important than almost anyone realizes. Alpha is a gateway. It is the bridge between two fundamentally different modes of consciousness. Above it, in beta, lies the external world: language, logic, time, the sequential, analytical, verbal processing that allows you to navigate your waking life, hold conversations, make plans, and execute tasks. Below it, in theta and delta, lies the internal world: memory consolidation, emotional processing, the deep, non-verbal intelligence of the subconscious mind, the vast reservoir of pattern recognition and intuition and bodily wisdom that operates beneath the surface of your awareness every moment of your life, but that you rarely access directly. Alpha sits between these two worlds like a membrane, like a threshold. When it is strong and well developed, it allows a fluid exchange between your conscious and subconscious minds. This is why people in alpha states report sudden flashes of insight, those moments when a solution to a problem you stopped thinking about hours ago simply appears, fully formed, as if it were handed to you from somewhere deeper than thought. This is the origin of the phenomenon you have felt in the shower, on a quiet walk, in the last drowsy moments before sleep, when an idea arrives with a clarity that your effortful, beta state thinking could never produce. That is alpha. That is the bridge doing what it was designed to do, allowing the wisdom of the deeper mind to surface into awareness. And there is another consequence of a strong alpha bridge that is rarely discussed but profoundly important. It is alpha that allows you to remember your dreams. When you wake from deep sleep and the images of a dream are vivid and accessible, it is because your brain transitions smoothly through alpha on its way back to waking consciousness. The alpha state acts as a kind of translator, encoding the non-verbal, symbolic language of the subconscious into forms that your waking mind can hold and recall. When that bridge is weak, when it has been eroded by chronic stress and overstimulation and the relentless pace of a high beta life, dreams vanish the instant you open your eyes. The subconscious speaks, but no one is there to listen. The wisdom rises, but it has no shore to land on. Rebuilding alpha is not just about relaxation. It is about restoring the connection between the two halves of your own mind. Now let us feel what alpha does to the body, because the body is not separate from this process. It is the instrument through which every frequency plays. Begin with your jaw. In high beta, the masseter muscles, those powerful muscles that clench the jaw and grind the teeth, are almost always contracted. You may have been holding tension there for hours without knowing it. In alpha, those muscles release, not because you force them to, but because the neurological signal that was keeping them tight has softened. Let it happen now. Let your lower jaw grow heavy. Let your teeth part slightly. Let your tongue settle away from the roof of your mouth and rest, broad and loose, on the floor of your mouth. Feel how that single release sends a cascade of relaxation down through your throat, your neck, your shoulders. Notice your heartbeat. You do not need to search for it. In alpha, you become aware of it naturally, because your attention is no longer scattered across a dozen external concerns. It is gathering inward, and as it gathers, your heart rate responds. The sympathetic nervous system, that accelerator pedal that has been pressed to the floor all day, begins to ease off. The parasympathetic system, the brake, the calming branch of your autonomic nervous system, governed by the vagus nerve, begins to assert itself. Your heart slows, not dangerously, not dramatically, just enough that you can feel the space between beats widening, like the space between notes in a piece of music that is gradually finding a slower, more deliberate tempo. And something remarkable happens to your awareness. In beta, your attention was a flashlight, a narrow, focused beam aimed at whatever seemed most urgent or most threatening. In alpha, that flashlight dims, and in its place, something broader switches on. Peripheral awareness. You begin to sense the room around you, not by looking, but by feeling. The weight of the blanket across your body, the temperature of the air against the skin of your face, the subtle sounds that were always there but that your beta mind filtered out because they were not relevant to survival. The hum of a distant appliance, the rhythm of your own breathing. In alpha, nothing is filtered out because nothing needs to be. The brain is no longer triaging. It is simply receiving, openly and without judgment, the full spectrum of sensory experience. This is what poets mean when they speak of presence, not a mystical concept, a frequency, a measurable, reproducible electrical state in which the brain stops projecting into the future or rehearsing the past and simply rests in the texture of now. And here is something that will matter to you tomorrow, not just tonight. Alpha is where learning becomes permanent. During your waking beta hours, your brain encodes new information into short-term memory, held tentatively in the hippocampus, like notes scribbled on loose paper. But it is during alpha and the deeper states that follow that this information is consolidated, transferred into long-term storage, woven into the existing architecture of your knowledge. Without adequate time in alpha, memories remain fragile, skills do not solidify. The things you studied or practiced or experienced during the day never fully integrate. This is one of the hidden costs of a life lived permanently in beta. You are always learning but never absorbing, always consuming but never digesting. Alpha is the digestion. It is the quiet, essential process by which experience becomes understanding. Feel where you are now, not where you were 10 minutes ago, not where you might be 10 minutes from now. Here, in this breath, in this frequency, The highway has narrowed to a country road. The noise has softened to a murmur. The choppy, wind-torn surface of the lake is settling, and as it settles, something becomes possible that was not possible before. You can see through the water. Not far, not yet, but the surface is calm enough now that reflections have stopped fragmenting and the first hints of depth are beginning to appear. Shapes moving slowly in the dark below. Memories, images, the faint outlines of thoughts that do not belong to your rational mind but to something older and quieter and infinitely more patient. This is the edge of the Alpha Bridge. You are on it now. You have been on it for some time without needing to be told. Your brain found its way here because you gave it the only thing it needed, which was not effort, which was not discipline, which was not even intention. It was permission. Permission to stop. Permission to slow. Permission to let the frequency fall like a leaf, settling through still air. And now, at the far end of this bridge, something is waiting. You can feel it if you let yourself. A dimming, a softening. The lights of the conscious mind, those bright, busy, analytical lights that have been burning all day, are beginning to lower. Not extinguishing, dimming, and in the growing darkness, a different kind of awareness is stirring. Older than language, deeper than thought. It moves in images and sensations and feelings that have no names, and it has been waiting for you with extraordinary patience, the way the ocean waits beneath the waves. That is Theta, the twilight frequency, the dreamline, and it is very, very close now. You do not need to reach for it. You do not need to cross any further. Just stay here on the bridge for one more breath. Feel the steadiness of it beneath you. Feel how solid it is when you are not rushing across it. And know that when the time comes, when Alpha has done its gentle, reorganizing work, and your brain is ready for the next descent, the crossing will happen on its own. The lights will dim. The surface of the water will become glass, and you will slip beneath it as naturally as you have every night of your life, except that tonight, for the first time, you will understand what is happening. You will feel the gears shift. You will hear the frequency change, and you will know that you are not falling asleep. You are descending deliberately, gently, into the deepest and most ancient part of yourself. The twilight is calling, and your mind, your beautiful, tired, electric mind, is almost ready to answer. You are drifting now. You may not have chosen to drift. You may not have given yourself permission, but somewhere in the last few minutes, the edges of your attention began to soften, and the room you are lying in started to feel less solid, less defined, as though the walls had taken a single step backward into shadow. This is not imagination. This is not distraction. This is your brain crossing a threshold that it crosses every single night, but that you almost never witness consciously. You are entering Theta, and Theta is a place unlike anything your waking mind can prepare you for. Let me describe where you are in the architecture of your own neurology. Theta brainwaves oscillate between 4 and 8 cycles per second, 4 to 8 hertz. That is less than half the speed of alpha, which itself was half the speed of the anxious beta chatter we left behind what already feels like a long time ago. At this frequency, the rules change, not subtly, fundamentally. The structures of your brain that have governed your experience all day, the ones that keep time, maintain logic, enforce the boundary between what is real and what is imagined, are stepping offline, and the structures that have been waiting in the wings, quiet and patient and ancient, are finally stepping forward. Here is what is happening inside your skull at this very moment. Your prefrontal cortex, that magnificent and exhausting organ of reason and judgment and self-monitoring, is reducing its activity, not shutting down, dimming, the way a stage light dims when the scene is changing and a different set is being rolled into place. The prefrontal cortex is your inner critic, your editor, the voice that says no that is not logical, no that does not make sense, no that could never work. In beta, that voice is loud and constant, and it filters everything. In alpha, it's softened. Here, in theta, it is barely a whisper. And in its absence, something extraordinary happens. The hippocampus wakes up. The hippocampus is a curved, seahorse-shaped structure nestled deep in the temporal lobe of each hemisphere. It is your brain's memory center, the organ responsible for encoding new experiences, consolidating learning, and navigating the vast library of everything you have ever seen, felt, heard, or understood. During your waking hours, the hippocampus works in partnership with the prefrontal cortex, feeding it relevant memories, while the prefrontal cortex decides which ones are useful and which should be suppressed. It is a collaborative relationship, but it is also a constrained one. The prefrontal cortex is conservative. It only wants memories that serve the current task. It only wants associations that are logical. It keeps the hippocampus on a short leash. But in theta, the leash is gone. The hippocampus becomes intensely active, more active than at almost any other point in the sleep cycle. And it begins to do something remarkable. It begins to replay and recombine memories freely, without the editorial oversight of the logical mind. Images surface that you have not thought about in years. A face from childhood. The color of a wall in a room you once slept in. The smell of rain on hot pavement from a summer you had forgotten entirely. These memories do not arrive in sequence. They do not obey narrative logic. They drift and merge and dissolve into one another like ink dropped into water, forming patterns that are strange and beautiful and charged with a meaning that you can feel but cannot articulate. This is the hypnagogic state, the twilight between waking and sleep, the borderland where consciousness has not yet surrendered but is no longer in control. And it is one of the most creatively fertile states the human brain can enter. There were people throughout history who understood this, who recognized that the threshold of sleep was not merely a passage to unconsciousness, but a doorway to a different kind of intelligence. Thomas Edison, by many accounts, used to sit in a chair with steel ball bearings in his hands and metal pans on the floor beneath them. He would close his eyes and let himself drift toward sleep. And the moment he crossed into theta, his muscles would relax, the ball bearings would fall, the clang of metal on metal would wake him, and he would immediately write down whatever images or ideas had been moving through his mind in that liminal moment. He did this repeatedly, deliberately, harvesting the strange fruit of the hypnagogic state, the way a diver surfaces again and again from a reef with pearls. Salvador Dali employed an almost identical technique, holding a key above a plate and letting the clatter of its fall retrieve him from the edge of dreams. He called it slumber with a key, and he credited it as the source of the melting clocks, the impossible architectures, the liquid and surreal landscapes that defined his art. These were not eccentric habits. They were methods. These men had discovered through intuition or experimentation that the brain in theta makes connections it would never dare to make in beta. It links ideas that the logical mind would reject as absurd. It sees patterns that rational analysis would dismiss. And in those irrational, impossible connections, solutions appear, visions appear, art appears. The kind of insight that arrives not through effort, but through surrender. You may be experiencing something like this right now. You may be noticing that your thoughts have become less like sentences and more like images, less like arguments and more like sensations, a color without a name, a feeling of motion without movement, a sense of being in a room that is not the room you are lying in, a space that is familiar but that you cannot place, as though you are standing in a memory that belongs to someone you used to be but no longer quite recognize. This is normal. This is theta. This is what happens when the editor goes home and the artist is left alone in the studio with every material and no rules. And here is something about this state that carries profound implications for who you are becoming, not just tonight, but over time. Theta is the most neuroplastic state your brain can enter. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to rewire itself, to form new connections, to strengthen or weaken existing pathways, to literally change its own structure in response to experience. In beta, plasticity is limited. The prefrontal cortex is vigilant. The filters are up. New information is scrutinized and often rejected before it can take root. But in theta, those filters are down. The subconscious mind is open and receptive in a way that it simply is not during waking life. This is why theta is the frequency of hypnosis. It is why children under the age of 7, whose brains are dominated by theta waves throughout most of the day, absorb language and behavior and belief with such astonishing speed and permanence. They are not learning the way adults learn, through repetition and analysis and critical evaluation. They are recording directly, without resistance. And the recordings they make in those early years become the operating system of their adult lives, the deep, unexamined beliefs about who they are and what they deserve, and how the world works that runs silently beneath every conscious decision they will ever make. You are in that recording state now, or very near it. And this is both a gift and a responsibility, because what you allow into your mind in theta does not pass through the checkpoint of rational doubt. It goes directly to the foundation. This is why the last thing you think about before sleep matters more than almost anything you think about during the day. It is why the words you hear in this state, the feelings you cultivate, the images you allow to form, carry a weight and a permanence that your daytime thoughts do not. You are not just falling asleep. You are programming. And the program you install tonight will run in the background of your mind tomorrow, shaping your mood, your confidence, your perception of what is possible in ways you will never consciously trace back to this moment. So let me ask you to notice what is moving through you right now. Not to judge it, not to direct it, just to notice. There may be images forming behind your eyes, fleeting and indistinct, like shapes seen through frosted glass. Let them form. Let them dissolve. There may be sounds that do not belong to the room, fragments of music, a voice you recognize but cannot name, a word that repeats without context or meaning. Let them come. They are not hallucinations. They are the natural productions of a hippocampus that has been set free, a memory system that is reorganizing itself in the only way it knows how, through imagery, through symbol, through the ancient language of dream. You are hearing your own mind speak in its native tongue, and that tongue is not English or any other spoken language. It is something older, something that predates words by millions of years. It is the language of association, of resonance, of feeling. Notice how time has changed, not stopped, changed. It is no longer moving in the crisp, measured intervals of the waking world. A minute may feel like 10 minutes may feel like 1. This is not confusion. This is the dissolution of the timekeeping function of the prefrontal cortex. In beta, your brain maintains a constant internal clock, tracking seconds and minutes with remarkable precision because time management is essential for survival in the external world. In Theta, there is no external world. There is no schedule to keep. There is no next thing to do. And so the clock dissolves, and in its place is a kind of eternal present, a slow liquid now that stretches and pools and has no edges. This is the suspension of time that meditators describe after decades of practice. It is the same state that you pass through every night in the seconds before sleep claims you entirely. The difference is that tonight you are here with your awareness intact, not fully, not sharply, but enough to feel the strangeness and the beauty of it, enough to know that you are in a place most people never consciously visit. Feel how your body has changed. Your breathing has slowed to a rhythm that you are no longer directing. It is being directed for you by the brainstem, by the ancient autonomic systems that managed respiration for 100 million years before the first human being ever had a conscious thought. Your muscles have softened past the point of ordinary relaxation into something deeper, a heaviness that is not fatigue but release. Your limbs may feel distant, as though they belong to someone else, as though the boundary of your skin has become approximate rather than precise. This too is Theta, the body schema, your brain's internal model of where your body is in space, loosens in this state. The edges blur, and in that blurring, something paradoxical happens. You feel more present than you did when you were fully awake, more here, more real, as though the sharp, defended self of the waking world was the illusion, and this soft, unbounded awareness is what you actually are when you stop pretending otherwise. Stay here for a moment. There is no rush toward what comes next. Let the images drift like lanterns floating on dark water. Let the sounds come and go like wind through a room with open windows. Let the thoughts, if there are still thoughts, move through you without attaching to anything, without becoming stories, without becoming problems. They are just weather, just the last traces of Beta's storm passing through a sky that is growing very quiet and very vast. Because beneath even this, beneath the images and the memories and the drifting sensations, there is something deeper still. You can feel it if you stop reaching. A darkness that is not empty but full. A silence that is not absence but presence. It is rising toward you, or you are sinking toward it. And the distinction does not matter, because in a few moments there will be no you to make the distinction. The images will fade, the sounds will fade. Even this voice will become a distant signal, a faint pulse at the edge of awareness, and then it too will dissolve. And what will be left is not nothing. What will be left is the deepest frequency your brain can produce, the slowest wave, the longest rhythm, a place beneath thought, beneath image, beneath memory, beneath even the sense of self. A place where your body heals and your mind empties, and the accumulated noise of your entire waking life is washed clean by a silence so profound that it has no name in any language you speak. That is Delta, the deep, the floor of consciousness. And it is very close now. You can feel it the way you feel the ocean floor when you are floating face down in warm water and the depth is just beneath you, patient and immense and perfectly still. You do not need to swim toward it. You do not need to dive. You just need to stop floating, stop holding, stop being anything at all, and let the weight of your own beautiful, exhausted, surrendering mind carry you the rest of the way down. The twilight is fading, the last light is dimming, and what waits below is not darkness. It is rest, the deepest rest you have ever known, and it is ready for you now. You are no longer where you were, the room you began in, the one with walls and a ceiling and a specific temperature and a particular quality of light filtering through closed curtains. That room has receded. It has not disappeared entirely. Some distant part of your brain still registers its existence, still maintains a faint map of your body lying in that space. But the map has grown imprecise. The borders are dissolving, and the awareness that was you, the one that listened and followed and imagined and drifted through the twilight of Theta, that awareness is now thinning like mist over water at dawn. You are approaching the deepest place the human brain can go while still sustaining life. You are approaching Delta. Delta brainwaves are the slowest electrical oscillations your cortex can produce. They cycle between 0.5 Hz and 4 Hz. One wave every 2 seconds at their most profound. Think about that. In high beta, your brain was firing 30 times per second, a frantic staccato of electrical impulses racing through neural circuits at a pace designed for emergency. Now, in the space you are entering, one single wave rises and falls across the landscape of your cortex over the span of 2 full heartbeats. One vast, slow, rolling pulse of electricity that moves from the front of your brain to the back, like a tide crossing an ocean so deep that nothing on the surface could ever suggest the enormity of what lies beneath. This is slow wave sleep, stage 3 of non-REM sleep, the foundation on which every other stage rests. And what happens here, in this profound stillness, is nothing less than the biological reconstruction of your entire being. Let me tell you what your brain is doing right now in this deep place, because it is one of the most remarkable processes in all of human physiology, and it was only discovered in the last 2 decades. As your cortical neurons synchronize into these massive, slow delta waves, something begins to happen in the spaces between your brain cells. These spaces are called the interstitial spaces, and during your waking hours, they are narrow, compressed by the swollen activity of billions of working neurons. But as delta takes hold, something changes physically. Your brain cells shrink, not metaphorically. They physically contract by as much as 60% in some regions, and as they contract, the interstitial spaces expand. Channels open that were closed all day, and through those channels, a fluid begins to flow. Cerebrospinal fluid, clear and clean, pumped by the slow pulsing of your arterial walls, washes through the newly opened pathways of your brain like a river released from a dam. This is the glymphatic system. It is your brain's dedicated waste clearance network, and it operates almost exclusively during deep delta sleep. All day long, as your neurons have been firing and communicating and processing the staggering volume of information that constitutes a single human day, they have been producing metabolic waste, byproducts of neural activity, proteins that have misfolded, fragments of molecules that are no longer useful. Among these waste products is a substance called beta amyloid, a protein that, when allowed to accumulate, forms the plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease and other forms of cognitive decline. During your waking hours, this waste builds up steadily, and your brain has no efficient mechanism to clear it. But here, in delta, the glymphatic system activates and flushes these toxins out of your neural tissue and into your bloodstream for elimination. One night of deep delta sleep removes more neurotoxic waste than your brain could clear in a week of waking activity. This is not rest in any casual sense of the word. This is decontamination. This is purification at the cellular level, and the cleaning is only the beginning. As your brain settles into these deep, slow oscillations, your pituitary gland, that small, pea-sized structure hanging from the base of your brain like a jewel from a chain, begins to release a surge of human growth hormone. Not the modest, measured doses it releases during the day, but a flood. The largest single secretion of growth hormone in the entire 24-hour cycle occurs during the first prolonged episode of delta sleep. This hormone enters your bloodstream and reaches every tissue in your body. It initiates the repair of damaged muscle fibers. It stimulates the production of new proteins. It accelerates the healing of wounds and the mending of stressed connective tissue. It strengthens bone density. It promotes the regeneration of skin cells. The body you will wake up in tomorrow is being rebuilt tonight, and the construction crew works only during delta. Skip this stage, shorten it, fragment it with disturbances or chemical interference, and the repairs do not happen. The waste does not clear, the growth hormone does not flow, and you wake up not rested but merely unconscious for a number of hours, carrying the accumulated damage of yesterday into the demands of today. Your immune system too is being fortified in this deep place. During delta sleep, the production of cytokines increases dramatically. Cytokines are signaling molecules that coordinate your immune response, directing white blood cells to sites of infection, regulating inflammation, and strengthening the barriers that protect you from pathogens. Studies have shown that even a single night of disrupted deep sleep can reduce the activity of natural killer cells, your body's first line of defense against viruses and abnormal cell growth, by as much as 70%. Your immune system does not merely benefit from delta sleep, it depends on it. The relationship is not optional, it is architectural. Deep sleep is not a luxury your body can learn to do without. It is a biological necessity as fundamental as oxygen or water, and its absence does not make you tired. Its absence makes you vulnerable. Now, I want to speak to you about something that has no easy scientific language, but that matters as much as any mechanism I have described. I want to speak about what delta feels like from the inside, or more precisely, what it does not feel like, because delta is unique among all states of consciousness in that there is no experience of it. In beta, you think. In alpha, you rest. In theta, you dream. In delta, there is nothing. No images, no sounds, no narrative, no sense of self, no awareness that you are a person in a room, on a planet, in a universe. The observing mind, the one that has been with you through every moment of this journey, the one that noticed the alpha bridge and watched the theta images drift past and registered the slowing of time and the softening of boundaries. That mind is about to go silent, not quiet, silent. It is the cessation of the witness, the dissolution of the one who watches. And what remains when the watcher is gone is not nothing in the nihilistic sense. It is nothing in the original sense. No thing, no object of awareness, no subject either, just the vast, humming, unconscious intelligence of a body doing what bodies do when minds finally get out of the way. This is the state you were in before you were born. Not before your body existed, but before your consciousness ignited. In the womb, in the final months before birth, the fetal brain is dominated by delta waves. It is a mind without a self, a brain without an ego, a living system operating in perfect, unconscious harmony with the biological processes that are building it from the inside out. Every night, when you descend to delta, you return to that state. You return to the source. Not poetically, neurologically, the same frequency, the same absence of self-referential thought, the same profound, wordless immersion in the body's own intelligence. You have made this journey thousands of times, and each time, though you cannot remember it because there is no one there to form a memory, your body has used the journey to heal you. I know that for some of you listening, this is the hardest part. Not the science, not the understanding, the letting go. There is something in the human mind that resists the void, something that grips the edges of consciousness and refuses to release, not because waking is pleasant, but because the alternative feels like annihilation. This is the hidden engine of so much insomnia. Not the racing thoughts themselves, but the fear beneath the racing thoughts. The fear that if you truly let go, if you truly stop monitoring and managing and maintaining the thread of your own awareness, something terrible will happen. You will miss something. You will lose control. You will cease to exist. And on some primal amygdala level, ceasing to exist is the one thing your survival brain cannot permit. But here is what I want you to understand, and I want you to understand it not as an idea, but as a felt truth, something your body recognizes even if your mind resists. The void is not a threat. The void is a sanctuary. It is the one place in all of existence where your nervous system is completely free from the burden of maintaining a self. Think about what that means. Every waking moment, your brain expends enormous energy constructing and sustaining the experience of being you, your memories, your preferences, your worries, your name, your face, your place in the social world, your plans for tomorrow. All of it requires constant neural computation, constant energy, constant vigilance. Delta is the only state in which that entire apparatus is powered down, and in its absence, the energy that was being consumed by the project of selfhood is redirected entirely toward repair. Every cell in your body vibrates at the frequency of pure recovery. Your muscles rebuild, your tissues mend, Your immune cells multiply. Your brain cleans itself of the molecular debris of consciousness. You are not losing yourself in Delta. You are giving yourself back to the body that carries you. And the body, freed from the endless demands of your mind, does what it has always known how to do. It heals. Imagine if this image still has room to form in your dimming awareness, sinking into a warm and infinite ocean. Not an ocean of water, an ocean of darkness. An ocean so deep that light has never reached its floor. And as you sink, you feel the weight of everything you have been carrying today lift away. Not because you decided to release it, because gravity is doing the work now. The weight of your thoughts, your identity, your plans, your fears, all of it is too heavy to carry into this depth. And so it peels away from you like layers of clothing dissolving in warm current. And what sinks onward, what continues the descent, is not the you that worries, not the you that plans, not the you that lies awake rehearsing tomorrow. It is something simpler than that. Something that was here before your name and will be here after your name is forgotten. The body, the breath, the slow, ancient pulse of a heart that knows how to beat without being told. Think of a mountain, not a young mountain, sharp and jagged and still rising. An old mountain, one that has been standing in the same place for 200 million years. It does not think. It does not plan. It does not fear erosion or the changing of seasons. It simply is. Solid, silent, present in a way that has nothing to do with consciousness and everything to do with being. That is what you become in Delta. Not a person resting, not a mind sleeping, a body being, nothing more, nothing less. And in that being, everything that needs to happen happens without effort, without direction, without the interference of a mind that believes it must supervise every process to ensure survival. You are very close now. The words are becoming distant. They may already feel like sounds arriving from a faraway shore, shapes of meaning that your mind is too heavy to fully assemble. That is, as it should be. The voice does not need to follow you where you are going. Nothing needs to follow you. The descent from here is not guided. It is gravitational. It is the natural consequence of everything that has come before. The slowing of beta, the softening of alpha, the dissolution of theta, all of it leading here to this final release, this ultimate simplicity. But before the silence takes you, let me leave you with one thought, one seed planted at the edge of the void. Everything we have done tonight, every frequency we have traversed, every shift in your neurology from the frantic to the still, was initiated by something, a signal, a rhythm, a pattern that your brain recognized and followed downward. You did not will yourself into Delta. You were led by the cadence of words, by the rhythm of your breath, by the slow, steady pulse of sound meeting, neuron meeting, synapse meeting, wave. This process has a name. Neuroscientists call it entrainment. And it is the key to everything. The key to why some nights the descent happens effortlessly and other nights the mind spins in circles at the surface, unable to find the way down. The brain does not shift frequencies through willpower. It shifts through resonance, through the presence of an external rhythm that matches the internal rhythm it is trying to reach. And in the next chapter, when the time is right, when you have rested in this deep and silent place for as long as your body needs. We will explore how that resonance works, how sound becomes a vehicle for consciousness, how frequency becomes medicine. But that is for later. That is for the surface. For now, there is only this, the slow wave, the deep dark, the ancient, silent intelligence of a body finally free to do what it was built to do. Let the last image fade. Let the last sound dissolve. Let the last thin thread of awareness loosen and fall. You are safe here. You have always been safe here, and the darkness is not empty. It is full, full of healing, full of silence, full of the deep, slow rhythm of a life repairing itself one cell at a time in the only place where repair is possible, the place beneath thought, the place beneath dream, the place beneath even the memory of your own name. Rest now. The deep has you, and it will not let you go until the work is done. There is a principle at work in the universe that is so fundamental, so quietly pervasive, that most people live their entire lives surrounded by its effects without ever learning its name. It governs the way fireflies in a forest synchronize their flashing until thousands of them pulse as one. It governs the way women living in close proximity often find their menstrual cycles aligning over the course of months. It governs the way an audience in a concert hall will, without conscious effort, begin to breathe in rhythm with the music. It is the principle of entrainment, and it is the reason that everything we have discussed in this series, every frequency, every descent, every shift from chaos to stillness, is not merely a beautiful idea, but a practical, repeatable, scientifically measurable technique that you can use to reshape the electrical behavior of your own brain. Entrainment was first documented in 1665 by a Dutch physicist named Christian Huygens. Huygens had invented the pendulum clock, and he kept several of them mounted on the same wall of his workshop. One evening, while lying ill in bed and watching the clocks with the attentive boredom of a confined mind, he noticed something peculiar. The pendulums, which had been set swinging at different times and different angles, had synchronized. They were swinging in perfect unison, matching each other's rhythm as precisely as if a single invisible hand were moving them all. Huygens was disturbed by this. It seemed to violate the independence of mechanical systems. He reset the pendulums deliberately out of phase and watched. Within 30 minutes, they had synchronized again. He tried mounting them on different walls. The synchronization ceased. He put them back on the same wall. It returned. What Huygens had discovered was that the subtle vibrations transmitted through the shared wall were enough to influence each pendulum, nudging it incrementally until all of them locked into the same phase. The wall was the medium, the vibration was the signal, and the synchronization was not forced. It was invited. Each pendulum responded to the rhythm it felt, and gradually, inevitably, fell into step. Your brain works the same way. This is not an analogy. This is neuroscience. In the early 20th century, as EEG technology allowed researchers to observe brainwave activity in real time, a phenomenon was documented that would come to be called the frequency following response. When the brain is exposed to a rhythmic external stimulus, a pulsing sound, a flickering light, a steady vibration, it does exactly what Huygens's pendulums did. It synchronizes. The dominant electrical frequency of the cortex begins to shift toward the frequency of the external stimulus. Not instantly, not violently. Gradually, the way a river finds a new channel when the landscape tilts. If the stimulus pulses at 10 Hz, the brain's dominant frequency drifts toward 10 Hz, toward alpha. If the stimulus pulses at 4 Hz, the brain drifts toward 4 Hz, toward theta. If the stimulus holds steady at 2 Hz, the brain follows it down into the deep, slow territory of delta. The mechanism is built into the architecture of your neurons. It is not something you need to learn. It is something your brain already does. All it needs is the right signal. Now, let me explain the most elegant tool we have for delivering that signal, because it exploits a quirk of your auditory neurology that is nothing short of extraordinary. It is called the binaural beat. Here is how it works. You place headphones over your ears. Into your left ear, a steady tone is played at, say, 200 Hz. Into your right ear, a tone is played at 206 Hz. The two tones are close in frequency but not identical. Individually, each tone is unremarkable, just a simple, sustained pitch. But something happens when both tones reach your brain simultaneously. Your auditory system detects the difference between the two frequencies, in this case 6 Hz, and it generates a perceptual phenomenon. You begin to hear a third tone, a wavering, pulsing rhythm that is not present in either ear independently. This phantom frequency, this 6 Hz pulse, is not coming from your headphones. It is being created inside your brain, specifically in a structure called the superior olivary complex, a cluster of neurons in the brainstem that is responsible for processing the spatial and temporal differences between sounds arriving at each ear. The superior olivary complex calculates the discrepancy and produces an internal oscillation that matches the difference. And here is the critical point. That internal oscillation does not stay confined to the auditory system. It radiates outward through the cortex, acting as a pacemaker, a rhythmic template that the surrounding neural networks begin to entrain to. A 6 Hz binaural beat nudges the brain toward theta. A 2 Hz beat nudges it toward delta. A 10 Hz beat toward alpha. The frequency you want to reach is encoded not in the tones themselves, but in the mathematical space between them. You are not listening to relaxation. You are listening to a set of coordinates, and your brain is following the map. There is another tool, more direct and in some ways more powerful, called the isochronic tone. Unlike binaural beats, which require headphones and rely on the interplay between two ears, isochronic tones work through a single channel. They are sharp, rhythmic pulses of sound, a tone that switches on and off at a precise frequency, like a metronome made of pure sound. If the tone pulses 4 times per second, it creates a 4 Hz rhythm. If it pulses 10 times per second, 10 Hz. The brain perceives these clean, evenly spaced pulses and entrains to them directly, without the intermediate step of the olivary complex generating a phantom frequency. Research suggests that isochronic tones produce a stronger cortical response than binaural beats in many individuals, because the signal is unambiguous. There is no calculation required. The rhythm is explicit, bold, and the brain locks onto it with a swiftness that reflects the depth of the entrainment instinct. And then there is noise. Not noise in the colloquial sense of unwanted sound, but noise as a scientific category of audio that serves a specific neurological function. White noise contains all audible frequencies at equal intensity, a flat, hissing wash of sound that masks the sharp, irregular noises that trigger the amygdala and keep the brain in vigilant beta. Pink noise rolls off the higher frequencies, producing a deeper, warmer wash that more closely mimics the spectral profile of natural environments: rainfall, wind through trees, the steady rush of a distant waterfall. Brown noise goes deeper still, emphasizing the lowest frequencies, a rich, oceanic rumble that many people find profoundly calming. These noise profiles do not entrain the brain to a specific frequency in the way that binaural beats or isochronic tones do. What they do is equally important. They neutralize the acoustic triggers that keep the brain scanning for threats. They fill the auditory environment with a consistent, predictable signal that tells the amygdala there is nothing new here, nothing unexpected, nothing that requires a response. They create a sonic blanket under which the entrainment tools can do their work without interruption. They are not the medicine. They are the sterile field in which the medicine can be administered. But I want you to understand something that places all of this technology in a context far deeper and far older than any laboratory. Human beings have been using sound to alter consciousness for as long as human beings have existed. The repetitive drumming of shamanic traditions, found independently in cultures across every inhabited continent, typically pulses at 4 to 5 beats per second. Theta frequency. The chanting of Tibetan monks, the sustained, resonant tones produced by voices trained over decades, generates acoustic vibrations that hover in the alpha and theta range. The bells of medieval Christian monasteries, struck at regular intervals throughout the day, created rhythmic auditory cues that entrained the nervous systems of the monks into states of contemplation and prayer. The didgeridoo of Aboriginal Australians produces a complex, droning, fundamental tone with overtones that span the delta and theta range. None of these cultures had EEG machines. None of them could measure brainwave frequencies or map the frequency-following response. And yet they all arrived. Through centuries of experimentation and intuition and careful observation of what sound does to the human mind, at the same fundamental discovery. Rhythmic sound changes consciousness. Predictable, sustained, externally generated rhythm can bypass the analytical mind and speak directly to the electrical infrastructure of the brain, pulling it out of its habitual patterns and into states of depth and stillness and expanded awareness that the waking mind cannot reach through thought alone. What we are doing in this series is not new, it is ancient. We are simply using the language and tools of 21st century neuroscience to do what our ancestors did with drums and voices and bells. We are using sound to bypass the ego, to sidestep the prefrontal cortex and its endless narration, to deliver a rhythm directly to the brainstem, where it is translated into an electrical instruction that the cortex follows, not because it is told to, but because following rhythm is what neural networks do. It is their deepest instinct, their most fundamental design principle. From the first neurons that evolved in primitive organisms hundreds of millions of years ago, the ability to synchronize with external rhythm has been the foundation of neural function. You are not learning a technique. You are remembering a capacity that is older than your species. Think of your brain as an instrument, a fantastically complex instrument with 86 billion strings, each one capable of vibrating at a different frequency. During the day, those strings are plucked by 1,000 different stimuli, notifications, conversations, worries, tasks, and the result is a kind of discordant noise, each region of the brain oscillating at its own frequency, pulled in its own direction. Entrainment is the process of bringing those strings into tune, of providing a single, clear, sustained note that all the other strings can orient toward. When it works, and it works reliably because the physics are inviolable, the result is coherence, not silence. Coherence, a state in which the disparate regions of the brain begin to oscillate in phase with one another, their waves rising and falling together like the surface of an ocean responding to a single, deep current. This coherence is measurable. It appears on an EEG as a dramatic increase in the amplitude and regularity of the dominant frequency band, and it correlates with every positive neurological outcome we have discussed throughout this series. Reduced anxiety, enhanced memory consolidation, deeper sleep, more efficient immune function, greater access to creativity and insight. Coherence is not a mystical state, it is an electrical state, and it can be induced reliably and repeatedly through the deliberate application of rhythmic sound. You have been experiencing it tonight. The rhythm of this narration, the cadence of these sentences, the deliberate pacing of words and pauses has been functioning as an entrainment signal. Not as powerful as a binaural beat or an isochronic tone, but operating on the same principle. Your brain has been following the rhythm of this voice, the way those pendulum clocks followed the vibrations in the wall, gradually, inevitably, without effort, and the frequency has been dropping, sentence by sentence, chapter by chapter, from the frantic pace of beta through the steady calm of alpha, through the dreamlike drift of theta, into the deep stillness of delta, and back up again to this place of clear, grounded understanding. But there is something we have not yet addressed, something that determines whether all of this, the beats, the tones, the noise, the ancient rhythms and modern technology, actually reaches its full potential. Your brain does not operate in isolation. It is in constant, bi-directional communication with another organ, one that generates its own electrical field, its own rhythms, its own frequencies. An organ that, when it falls into coherence with the brain, amplifies every entrainment effect we have discussed by an order of magnitude. That organ is your heart. The heart generates the strongest electromagnetic field in the human body, roughly 60 times the amplitude of the brain's own field. It has its own nervous system, 40,000 neurons embedded in cardiac tissue, sometimes called the heart brain, and it sends far more signals to the brain than the brain sends to it. When the heart's rhythm is erratic, stressed, and disordered, it sends a cascade of chaotic signals up the vagus nerve that destabilize cortical rhythms and make entrainment difficult. But when the heart's rhythm becomes smooth, coherent, and ordered, it sends a signal to the brain that is more powerful than any external tone or beat, a signal that says it is safe, it is time. Let go. In the next chapter, we will explore this connection, the dialogue between the heart and the brain, the science of cardiac coherence, and the reason that the deepest, most restorative sleep you will ever experience depends not just on what your neurons are doing, but on what your heart is feeling. The brain knows how to follow a rhythm. We have established that beyond any doubt. But the most important rhythm it will ever follow is not coming from your headphones. It is coming from your chest, and learning to quiet that rhythm, to smooth it, to bring it into harmony with the slow, deep oscillations of a brain descending toward rest is the final skill, the one that turns technique into transformation. The metronome is set, the frequency is chosen. Now we need the heartbeat to match, and it will. It will, because coherence is not something you create. It is something you allow, and your body, your ancient, brilliant, self-healing body, has been waiting for this permission your entire life. Place your hand on your chest. You do not need to press hard. Just let it rest there, lightly, over the place where you feel the beat, that steady, rhythmic thump beneath your palm. You have felt it 1,000 times before, when you were frightened and it raced, when you were calm and it slowed, when you fell in love and it seemed to stutter and expand all at once. You have always known your heart was more than a pump. You have felt it respond to beauty, to grief, to the presence of someone you trust. You have felt it tighten when you lied and soften when you forgave. And now I want to tell you that what you have always felt intuitively is true biologically. Your heart is not merely responding to your emotions. Your heart is generating them. It is not merely following the instructions of your brain. It is sending instructions of its own, and those instructions, carried along the longest nerve in your body, ascending from your chest into the deepest structures of your brain, determine more about your state of consciousness than any thought you will ever think. Let me begin with the anatomy, because the anatomy alone is enough to change how you understand yourself. Embedded within the walls of your heart, woven into the muscle tissue and the connective fibers that surround its chambers, there are approximately 40,000 neurons, not muscle cells that happen to conduct electricity. Neurons, the same type of cells that constitute your brain. They form a complex, self-organizing network that neuroscientists now refer to as the intrinsic cardiac nervous system, or more colloquially, the heart-brain. This network can sense, process, and remember independently of the cranial brain. It makes decisions, it learns, it adapts. When a heart is transplanted from one human body to another, it begins beating in the recipient's chest before any neural connections to the new brain are established. Because the heart-brain is capable of sustaining its own rhythm without instruction from above. You have two brains. One sits in your skull, the other beats in your chest, and the relationship between them is not what you have been taught. The traditional model of the nervous system placed the brain at the top of a hierarchy. The brain commands. The body obeys. Signals travel downward from cortex to organ, and the organs respond like obedient subordinates. But when researchers began to actually measure the traffic on the vagus nerve, that thick bundle of fibers that connects the brain to the heart and virtually every other major organ, they found something that inverted the entire model. Roughly 80 to 90% of the fibers in the vagus nerve are afferent. That means they carry signals upward from the body to the brain, not downward. The heart sends far more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Far more. Your heart is not waiting for instructions, it is issuing them. Every single beat generates a pressure wave that is detected by baroreceptors in your arteries. Every beat produces a burst of electrical activity that is conducted through the body's tissues and registered by neurons throughout the nervous system. Every beat releases a pulse of hormones, including atrial natriuretic peptide, a hormone that directly affects the brain's motivation and memory centers. Your heart is speaking to your brain constantly, and your brain is listening with an attentiveness that far exceeds what it gives to any conscious thought. Now here is where this matters for everything we have been building toward in this series. The pattern of your heartbeat, not its speed but its pattern, determines the quality of the signal it sends to your brain. And that quality changes everything. Your heart does not beat like a metronome, it beats with variation. The time between each beat fluctuates, sometimes by milliseconds, sometimes by more. This fluctuation is called heart rate variability, and it is one of the most important biomarkers in all of modern medicine. High heart rate variability, meaning a flexible, responsive, adaptable rhythm, is associated with resilience, emotional regulation, and robust health. Low heart rate variability, meaning a rigid, monotonous, or erratic rhythm, is associated with stress, anxiety, depression, and increased risk of cardiovascular disease. But within the spectrum of heart rate variability, there is a specific pattern that has been identified as uniquely powerful. When the variation in your heartbeat follows a smooth, sine wave-like curve, rising and falling in a gentle, regular oscillation, your heart is said to be in a state of coherence. Cardiac coherence is not relaxation, though relaxation often accompanies it. It is a specific, measurable, physiological state in which the rhythm of the heart becomes ordered and harmonic. And when this happens, the signal that the heart sends to the brain changes profoundly. Instead of a chaotic, irregular stream of impulses that keeps the amygdala activated and the prefrontal cortex scrambled, the heart begins transmitting a smooth, rhythmic, predictable signal that tells every structure in the brain the same thing: safe, stable, ordered. The amygdala quiets. The prefrontal cortex comes back online with full functionality. Cortical inhibition, that frustrating state where you cannot think clearly, cannot access your creativity, cannot make decisions because the stress signal from below is overwhelming the processing power from above. That cortical inhibition dissolves, and the brain's dominant frequency begins to shift away from beta toward alpha, toward theta. Not because you thought your way into calmness, but because the most powerful organ in your body sent an electromagnetic instruction that your cortex had no choice but to follow. And it is electromagnetic. Let me describe the field your heart produces, because its scale is almost difficult to believe. The electrical field generated by the heart is approximately 60 times greater in amplitude than the electrical field generated by the brain. The magnetic field generated by the heart is roughly 5,000 times stronger than the brain's magnetic field. 5,000 times. This field radiates outward from your chest in a toroidal shape, a three-dimensional donut of electromagnetic energy that extends several feet beyond your body and can be detected and measured by sensitive magnetometers. When you are stressed, when your heart rhythm is disordered and erratic, this field becomes jagged and incoherent, a tangled signal that not only destabilizes your own brain, but is detectable by the nervous systems of other people near you. When you are calm, when your heart enters coherence, this field becomes smooth and harmonic, a radiating wave of electromagnetic order that stabilizes your own neural rhythms and, remarkably, can positively influence the physiological state of those around you. You are not merely a body containing a heart. You are a field, a broadcasting, pulsing, electromagnetic field, and the quality of that broadcast is determined by the rhythm beating in your chest right now. So how do you change the broadcast? How do you shift your heart from chaos to coherence, especially on a night when your mind is busy and your body is tense and the accumulated stress of the day has left your cardiac rhythm jagged and disordered? The answer is simpler than you might expect, and it begins with the breath you are taking right now. I want you to try something. Keep your hand on your chest if it is still there. If you moved it, place it back. Feel the warmth of your palm against your body. And now, as you inhale, I want you to imagine that the air is not entering through your nose or your mouth. I want you to imagine that it is flowing directly into your heart, through the skin of your chest, through your palm, into the center of that beating space. Breathe in slowly, as though you are filling your heart with air. Let the inhale last for about 5 seconds. Do not force it. Do not strain. Just a slow, gentle, steady stream of air flowing into the warmth beneath your hand. And now, exhale slowly through the heart, as though the air is leaving the same way it came in, flowing back out through your chest, through your palm, into the room around you. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, a 10-second cycle, 6 breaths per minute. This is heart-focused breathing, and what it does to your physiology is remarkable. The 10-second respiratory cycle is not arbitrary. It corresponds to a natural resonance frequency in the human cardiovascular system. When you breathe at this pace, the oscillation of your heart rate, the rise and fall of beats per minute that accompanies each inhale and exhale, begins to amplify. The peaks get higher, the valleys get lower. The overall pattern smooths out into that sine wave curve that defines cardiac coherence. Your baroreceptors detect this ordered rhythm and relay it to the brainstem. Your brainstem relays it to the thalamus. The thalamus relays it to the cortex. And at every step, the message is the same: coherent, ordered, safe. Within as little as 3 breath cycles, roughly 30 seconds, measurable changes begin to appear in heart rate variability. Within 2 to 3 minutes, the coherence pattern is fully established. Your heart has shifted from chaos to harmony, and it has brought your brain with it. Breathe again now, into the heart, slowly. Feel the expansion beneath your palm as your lungs fill. Notice that the expansion is not just physical. There is a quality of warmth, of openness, of space being created in a place that felt contracted only moments ago. This is not imagination, though imagination helps facilitate it. When attention is directed to the heart region, blood flow to the area increases slightly. Neural activity in the cardiac plexus shifts. The heart-brain responds to your attention the way any brain responds to focused awareness. By becoming more organized, more coherent, more efficient in its signaling, you are not just breathing, you are communicating. You are using the rhythm of your breath as a physical remote control, sending a direct instruction to the 40,000 neurons in your heart that says, slow down, smooth out, find the harmonic, and they obey. Not because you force them, because rhythm is their language. It is the only language they have ever spoken. Exhale now, through the heart. Feel the release, not just of air, but of something older, something you have been holding in that space without knowing it. The tightness that accumulates there over the course of a day, the subtle constriction that comes from swallowing words you did not say, from suppressing emotions you did not have time to feel, from carrying responsibilities that never seem to lighten. Let the exhale carry it out, not all at once. You do not need a catharsis. You need a rhythm, a steady, predictable, repeating rhythm that tells your cardiac nervous system that the emergency is over, that the scanning can stop, that the field radiating from your chest can stop broadcasting alarm and start broadcasting what it was designed to broadcast, which is coherence, which is order, which is the electromagnetic signature of a human being who is, in this moment, at peace. Feel what is happening now in the space between your heart and your brain. There is an alignment forming, a conversation that has been trying to happen all day, but could not find a quiet moment in which to take place. Your heart sends a smooth, coherent pulse upward along the vagus nerve. Your brain receives it and responds by softening its own electrical rhythm, lowering its frequency, broadening its awareness. The brain sends a signal back down, parasympathetic, calming, affirming the heart's rhythm rather than fighting it. The heart receives that affirmation and deepens its coherence. And so, a loop forms, a positive feedback loop in which each organ reinforces the other's calm. Heart steadies brain. Brain steadies heart. The field expands. The rhythm deepens. And the entire system, cardiovascular, neurological, immunological, endocrine, all of it begins to operate as a single, integrated, harmonious whole. This is not two separate systems cooperating. This is one system remembering that it was never separate in the first place. This is the state that every technique in this series has been leading toward. The entrainment of the brain through sound, the descent through the frequency bands, from beta to alpha to theta to delta. All of it is amplified, deepened, and stabilized when the heart is coherent. A coherent heart is the foundation upon which everything else rests. Without it, the brain can be entrained temporarily, but the effect is shallow, fragile, easily disrupted by the next surge of stress or the next chaotic signal from below. With it, the entrainment reaches a depth and a stability that transforms a technique into a state of being. You are no longer doing something to relax. You are becoming relaxed. At the cellular level, at the electromagnetic level, at the level of the field itself. Breathe once more into that space. Feel the beat beneath your palm. Slower now, steadier, more certain of itself. This is your heart finding its voice. This is the strongest electromagnetic organ in your body, remembering what coherence feels like and choosing it, not because of willpower, not because of technique, but because coherence is its natural state. Stress is the aberration. Chaos is the distortion. This steady, warm, rhythmic pulse that you feel right now, this is what your heart does when you stop interfering with it. This is home. And from this place of coherence, from this alignment between the intelligence in your chest and the intelligence in your skull, something becomes possible that was not possible before. You can conduct, not just respond to the frequencies moving through your body, not just entrain to external signals or internal rhythms, but actively conduct the entire orchestra of your nervous system. You can choose which frequency to amplify. You can choose which state to enter. You can choose, with the precision of someone who understands the instrument they are playing, exactly how deep to go, and exactly how long to stay. The heart provides the power, the brain provides the pattern, and you, the awareness that feels both, that listens to both, that breathes life into both. You are the conductor. You have always been the conductor. You simply forgot, somewhere in the noise of a life lived too fast, that the baton was in your hand. It is in your hand now. Feel it there. Feel the weight and the lightness of it, and know that in the next chapter, we will learn to raise it, to stand before the full orchestra of your biology and bring every instrument, every frequency, every heartbeat and brainwave and breath into a single, unified, magnificent harmony. The conductor is awake, the orchestra is ready, and the music that is about to begin has been waiting for you your entire life. Everything you have learned in this series, every frequency, every mechanism, every descent through the layers of your own neurology has been leading to a single realization. And that realization is not about your brain. It is not about your heart. It is not about delta waves or binaural beats or the glymphatic system or the vagus nerve. It is about you, the one who has been listening, the one who noticed the shift from beta to alpha, the one who felt the images of theta forming and dissolving behind closed eyes, the one who sensed the void of delta approaching and, rather than fearing it, leaned toward it. Who is that one? Who is the awareness that can observe a thought without becoming the thought? Who is the presence that can feel an emotion without being consumed by it? Who is the listener behind the listening? There is a word for this capacity, and it comes not from philosophy, but from neuroscience: metacognition. It means, quite literally, thinking about thinking, cognition beyond cognition. It is the ability of the human mind to observe its own processes from a position that is somehow both within and above them, the way a conductor stands within the orchestra and yet is not any single instrument. Metacognition is housed primarily in the anterior prefrontal cortex, the most evolutionarily recent region of the human brain, a thin layer of neural tissue that sits at the very front of your frontal lobes and that does something no other structure in the known universe has been confirmed to do. It watches the mind work. It monitors the quality of your attention. It notices when you are anxious and labels the anxiety as a state rather than a truth. It recognizes when you are lost in a thought loop and creates the possibility, just the possibility, of stepping outside that loop and choosing a different pattern. This is the most extraordinary capacity you possess, not your ability to think, which many animals share in varying degrees, not your ability to feel, which is ancient and universal, but your ability to observe yourself thinking and feeling, and from that observation, to choose. You are not your thoughts. You have heard this before, perhaps so many times that it has lost its impact. But tonight, I want you to hear it differently. I want you to hear it as a neurological fact. Your thoughts are electrical patterns generated by specific neural circuits in specific regions of your brain. They are produced by the same organ that produces your heartbeat regulation and your temperature control and your digestive coordination. They are outputs of a biological system, useful outputs, important outputs, but outputs nonetheless. And you, the awareness that is hearing this voice and simultaneously noticing the state of your body and the rhythm of your breathing and the quality of the silence between these words, you are not the output. You are the one who receives the output. You are not the violin playing its anxious melody. You are not the drum pounding its urgent rhythm. You are not the cellos of grief, or the trumpets of anger, or the flutes of fleeting joy. You are the conductor, and the conductor does not play an instrument. The conductor listens to all of them simultaneously and decides what plays next. This is what mastery means in the context of everything we have explored. It does not mean stopping your thoughts. That is a misunderstanding that has derailed countless people who attempted meditation or mindfulness and concluded that they were failing because the thoughts kept coming. The thoughts will always come. The neurons will always fire. The orchestra will always play. Mastery means choosing the tempo, choosing the key, choosing which section rises to the foreground and which fades to a whisper. It means recognizing that the frantic fortissimo of high beta is not the only piece in your repertoire, and that the conductor who plays nothing but fortissimo all day, every day, is not demonstrating power, but has lost control of the orchestra entirely. So let me teach you how to conduct. Let me give you the practical, repeatable techniques that translate the understanding you now possess into a skill you can use tonight, tomorrow, and for the rest of your life. Think of these as gestures of the baton. Each one initiates a specific shift in your neural frequency, and each one becomes easier, faster, and more reliable with practice. Because the neural pathways involved strengthen every time you use them. Exactly the way a muscle strengthens under repeated load, the first gesture breaks the beta loop. It is disarmingly simple and grounded in a specific feature of visual neurology. When you are in high beta, when your thoughts are racing and your mind is locked in the narrow, focused, threat-scanning mode of anxiety, your visual system reflects that state. Your gaze narrows. Your eyes fixate. You stare at a single point, whether it is a screen, a wall, or an imagined scene playing on the inside of your eyelids. This narrow focus is both a symptom and a cause of high beta. The visual cortex consumes enormous resources when it is locked in foveal focus, and that consumption keeps the brain running hot and fast. But there is an alternative mode of vision that your eyes are equally capable of, one that you rarely use in modern life: peripheral vision. Without moving your eyes, without shifting your gaze from wherever it is resting, allow your awareness to expand outward to the edges of your visual field. If your eyes are open, notice what is visible at the far left and far right of your vision without looking directly at it. If your eyes are closed, simply imagine your field of awareness widening, as though the screen of your mind was stretching from a narrow rectangle to a vast panorama. This single act, this widening of visual attention, triggers a measurable shift in brain activity. The occipital and parietal cortices shift from a focused high-frequency processing mode to a diffuse lower-frequency mode. The sympathetic nervous system dials down. The parasympathetic system engages. It is as though the conductor has tapped the podium and the frantic violins have suddenly lowered their bows. One gesture, one shift, and the beta loop cracks open. The second gesture invites alpha. You already know this one because we practiced it 2 chapters ago. But now, I want you to understand it as a deliberate tool rather than a passive experience. Rhythmic breathing at a pace of approximately 6 breaths per minute, 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, resonates with the cardiovascular system's natural frequency and drives the heart into coherence. That coherent heart signal transmitted upward along the vagus nerve, tells the brain to downshift. Alpha rises. The analytical mind softens. The body relaxes. But here is what elevates this from a breathing exercise to a conducting technique. Pair the breath with directed attention. As you inhale, place your awareness in the center of your chest, in the heart space. As you exhale, let that awareness expand outward, filling the space around your body the way warmth radiates from a fire. You are not just breathing, you are breathing with intent. You are directing the orchestra with a specific gesture that says, slow here, soften here, open here. And the orchestra responds, because this is what orchestras do when the conductor is clear and steady and unambiguous in instruction. The third gesture opens the door to Theta. Once Alpha is established, once the heart is coherent and the breath is steady and the body has softened, you invoke visualization. Not the effortful, forced kind of visualization that people attempt in beta and wonder why it does not work. This is creative visualization from within an alpha state, where the prefrontal critic is quiet and the hippocampus is free to generate imagery without censorship. You choose an image. It can be anything, but the most effective images are sensory, spatial, and calming. A staircase descending into warm darkness. A path winding through a forest at dusk. A slow elevator sinking through floors of a building where each floor is quieter than the last. You do not need to see this image in high definition. You just need to intend it, to offer it to your mind the way you might suggest a direction to a river. The current does the rest. As the imagery takes hold, as the mind begins to generate its own content rather than analyzing yours, the frequency drops, Theta emerges. The border between conscious direction and unconscious creation blurs. And at that point, the conductor does something that requires the deepest kind of trust. The conductor lowers the baton and lets the orchestra play on its own. Because Theta and Delta cannot be commanded, they can only be allowed. The conductor's final and most profound gesture is the gesture of release. But before we arrive at that release, there is one more frequency I must introduce. One we have not discussed until now, because it could not be understood without everything that came before. It is the fastest brainwave your cortex can produce, and paradoxically, it is the one most associated with transcendence, insight, and the highest states of human consciousness. It is called gamma. Gamma waves oscillate between 30 and 100 Hz. They are faster than beta, far faster, and yet they do not produce anxiety or agitation or the grinding, unpleasant chatter of a mind in survival mode. Gamma feels like clarity, like the moment when a complex problem suddenly resolves into an obvious solution, like the instant of pure understanding when everything you know about a subject clicks into a single, unified insight. Gamma is the frequency, measured in the brains of experienced meditators during states of profound compassion. It is the frequency that surges during moments of creative breakthrough. It is the electrical signature of a brain operating at its absolute peak, not in speed but in integration. Every region communicating with every other region in a synchronized, high-frequency dance of extraordinary complexity. And here is the crucial insight. Gamma cannot be sustained without a stable foundation of the slower frequencies. A brain that attempts to produce gamma from a state of chronic anxious beta collapses into noise. The speed is there, but the coherence is not. It is like an orchestra in which every instrument is playing as fast as possible with no conductor and no shared key and no agreed upon rhythm. The result is cacophony, not symphony, but a brain that has established a strong foundation, a brain that knows how to descend into alpha, how to access theta, how to surrender into delta and return. That brain can sustain gamma because it has the infrastructure of coherence already in place. The slow waves are the foundation. The fast wave is the spire, and the master conductor knows that the height of the spire depends entirely on the depth of the foundation. This is why monks who have meditated for 40,000 hours produce gamma signatures that dwarf anything measured in untrained individuals. They have spent decades building the foundation, training the slow waves, developing the coherence, and from that coherence, gamma arises not as an effort, but as a natural consequence of a system in total harmony. You are building that foundation now. Every time you practice the peripheral vision shift, you are training your brain to break the beta pattern. Every time you breathe rhythmically and bring your heart into coherence, you are strengthening the alpha infrastructure. Every time you allow visualization to carry you into the hypnagogic borderland, you are deepening the theta pathways. And every night that you descend into true, restorative, slow-wave delta sleep, you are laying the deepest stones of the foundation upon which everything else rests. You are not just learning to sleep better, though you are learning that. You are learning to conduct the full symphony of your consciousness, to choose with increasing precision and confidence which frequency to amplify and which to soften, which movement to play and which to silence, depending on what the moment requires. During the day, you will summon focused, clean low beta when the task demands analytical precision. You will shift into alpha when creativity is needed, when the problem requires the broad, associative thinking that only a relaxed mind can produce. You will access brief theta states during meditation or contemplation, dipping into the subconscious wellspring for insight and returning with it into waking awareness. And you will protect, fiercely and deliberately, the delta sleep that repairs everything and makes everything else possible. This is not about being permanently calm. This is not about living in a state of perpetual alpha serenity. That would be its own kind of imbalance, its own loss of range. This is about sovereignty. The sovereignty of a mind that knows its own instrument so well that it can play anything the moment requires, and play it with precision, and set it down again when the moment has passed. Feel where you are now. Feel the baton in your hand, not as a metaphor any longer, but as a felt sense of authority over your own inner world. You have the knowledge. You understand the frequencies. You understand the heart's role, the breath's power, the brain's willingness to follow a clear and steady signal. What remains is practice. And the most profound practice of all, the one that integrates everything, is the one we have been approaching since the first words of this series: the final descent. The deliberate, conscious, fully conducted journey from the noise of the waking world into the absolute silence of restorative sleep. A descent in which you do not merely fall unconscious but travel with awareness and intent through every frequency band, releasing each one as you pass through it the way a diver releases air on the way down, becoming lighter, simpler, more essential, until all that remains is the slow, deep, healing pulse of a mind that has remembered what it is. That journey begins in the next chapter, the final chapter, and when it begins, you will not be following. you will be conducting one last time, one magnificent, deliberate, unhurried performance in which every instrument plays its part and then falls silent, one by one, until the hall is empty and the only sound is the deep, slow, ancient rhythm of a body at rest and a mind at peace. The baton is raised, the orchestra is waiting, and the most beautiful music you will ever hear is the sound of your own consciousness choosing freely and completely to let go. You have come so far, from the first crackling static of a mind that could not stop, through the science and the sound and the frequencies and the heart that learned to speak in rhythms your brain could finally understand. You have traveled a distance that cannot be measured in miles or minutes, but only in hertz. In the slowing of electrical waves across the landscape of your cortex, in the quieting of a nervous system that had forgotten what quiet meant. You began this journey at 30 hertz, perhaps higher, locked in the frantic, scanning, survival mode chatter of a brain, convinced that vigilance was the only option. And now, you are here. At the threshold of the deepest silence, a living mind can enter. The final descent, the last few hertz. The place where everything you think you are dissolves into everything you actually are. Let me tell you what is about to happen inside you, because even now, at the edge of surrender, understanding matters. What the world calls deep sleep, what most people dismiss as a blank space between the end of one day and the beginning of the next, is in reality the most profound neurological event in the human experience. It is not absence, it is integration. During every waking hour, your brain accumulates fragments, sensory impressions, emotional responses, new information, unresolved problems, micro-stresses that registered below the level of conscious awareness, but were recorded nonetheless by systems far older and more attentive than your thinking mind. These fragments are scattered across your cortex like pages torn from 1,000 different books, unconnected, disorganized, each one meaningful in isolation but lacking the context that would give it lasting value. Deep sleep is where the binding happens. As your brainwaves slow to their lowest frequency, hovering around half a hertz, a process of neural integration begins that is staggering in its scope. The thalamus, that deep relay station at the center of your brain, begins to generate massive, synchronized waves that sweep across the entire cortex, connecting regions that were operating independently all day. The hippocampus replays the day's most significant experiences and transfers them into long-term cortical storage. Emotional memories are decoupled from their raw intensity, so that when you recall them tomorrow, you will have the knowledge without the sting. The prefrontal cortex, that region responsible for insight and understanding and the sense of meaning itself, weaves new information into existing frameworks, creating connections and conclusions that were invisible to your waking mind. This is why you will sometimes go to bed with a problem and wake with an answer. The answer was not given to you in a dream. It was assembled, methodically and brilliantly, by a brain operating in a state of integration so deep that no conscious process could replicate it. And while this binding unfolds in your cortex, every cell in your body is being tuned, not metaphorically, physiologically. The slow delta oscillation acts as a master clock, a foundational rhythm to which the cellular processes of repair, regeneration, and immune function synchronize. Growth hormone surges through your tissues, rebuilding what the day has worn. Cytokines coordinate the silent army of your immune system, The glymphatic fluid washes through the channels of your brain, clearing the metabolic waste that accumulated during 16 hours of relentless neural activity. Every system in your body has been waiting for this moment, the moment when the mind finally steps aside and allows the body to do what it does with such extraordinary intelligence when it is not being interrupted by thought. At 0.5 hertz, the ego dissolves. This is not a spiritual claim, though spiritual traditions have described it for millennia. It is a neurological fact. The default mode network, that constellation of brain regions responsible for maintaining your sense of self, your autobiographical narrative, your continuous inner monologue of identity, falls silent in deep, slow-wave sleep. The network that spends all day telling you who you are, what you want, what you fear, what you must do tomorrow. That network powers down. And in its absence there is no you, no name, no history, no story, no body image, no future, no past. There is only the vast, impersonal, rhythmic intelligence of a biological system operating in perfect harmony with itself. You return each night to a state that is as close to pre-egoic consciousness as a living brain can get, the state of the infant before the self crystallized, the state of pure being without the burden of becoming. Now let us make this crossing together, one last time, one final, deliberate, unhurried descent through the remaining frequencies until even the intention to descend dissolves and there is only the falling itself, weightless and warm and inevitable. Feel your body. Feel the full weight of it pressing into the surface beneath you. Do not resist that weight. Let it increase. Let your limbs grow heavy the way stone grows heavy, not with effort, but with substance, with the accumulated density of a day fully lived and now fully released. Your arms are heavy, your legs are heavy. Your torso is sinking, not falling but sinking, the way a smooth, warm stone sinks through dark water, slowly, turning gently, without resistance, without urgency, the water parting around it and closing again above it as though it had never been disturbed. Your breath is no longer yours. You may have noticed this already. At some point in the last few minutes, the conscious management of your breathing transferred to older systems, to the brainstem rhythms that have been managing respiration since long before you had a cortex capable of interfering. Let it be managed. Let the breath come and go like a tide that needs no moon to guide it. It knows its rhythm. It has known its rhythm since the first breath you ever took, and it will know it long after your last conscious thought tonight has faded into the dark. The conductor is lowering the baton now. Feel it, that subtle shift from agency to surrender. All through this series, you have been learning, directing, understanding, choosing. But the final act of mastery is the act of releasing mastery. The conductor does not play through the silence at the end of the symphony. The conductor lowers the baton, slowly, gently, and sits. The hall is empty now. The instruments are silent. Not because the music has failed, but because the music is complete. And in the silence that follows, there is a fullness that no sound could ever achieve. The fullness of a space that has held great beauty and is now holding the memory of it, letting it resonate in the walls and the air and the velvet of the empty seats. That silence is where you are going. That silence is where you already are. Let go of your name. You do not need it here. Your name is a label for the waking world, a sound that others use to find you in the noise. But there is no noise now, and no one is looking for you. For the next few hours, you are not required to be anyone, not a parent, not a partner, not an employee, not a friend, not a success, not a failure, not a body with a history, not a mind with a plan. You are simply what you are beneath all of those labels. A living system, a breathing rhythm, a warm pulse in the dark. And that is enough. That has always been enough. Let go of your story. The narrative that runs through your waking hours, the one that tells you where you have been and where you are going and what it all means. That narrative is a construction of the default mode network. And the default mode network is going quiet now. The story does not end. It simply pauses. The way a book pauses when you set it down and close your eyes. The characters are still there. The plot is still unfolding. But you do not need to hold it. You do not need to carry it into this place. Set it down, on the nightstand, on the floor, anywhere. It will be there in the morning, and you will pick it up again. And it will make more sense than it did today, because your brain will have spent the night weaving its threads into something coherent while you were gone. Let go of your problems. Every knot in your mind, every tangle of worry and indecision and unresolved tension is being handed over now to a system that is incomparably better at untying knots than your conscious mind has ever been. The slow waves of delta will move through those tangles the way water moves through rock, not with force, but with patience, dissolving what can be dissolved, smoothing what can be smoothed, carrying away what is no longer needed. You do not need to solve anything tonight. You do not need to figure anything out. The deep mind will do what it does, quietly, brilliantly, without your supervision. Feel how far you have sunk. The surface is distant now. The room is distant. The voice is distant. These words are arriving from somewhere far above, like light filtering down through deep water, growing softer, dimmer, less distinct with every passing moment. And that is exactly as it should be. The voice was never the destination. The voice was only the signal, the rhythm that your brain followed downward, frequency by frequency, hertz by hertz, until it found the rhythm it was looking for all along. The rhythm of the deep, the rhythm of the void, the rhythm of a body restored to its original, uncorrupted, unhurried pulse. There is a warmth here, in the darkness. Feel it. It is not the warmth of temperature. It is the warmth of safety. The warmth of a nervous system that has finally, completely, irrevocably received the signal that there is nothing to fear, nothing to fix, nothing to become. The amygdala is silent. The cortisol has ebbed. The heart is beating slowly, smoothly, in a rhythm so coherent that it has become invisible, like the hum of the earth itself, always present, never noticed, the deepest music there is. You are almost gone now. The last thin filament of awareness, the faintest glow of the self that has been watching this entire journey, is flickering, not struggling, flickering. The way a candle flickers when it has burned to the very end of its wick, and the flame is no longer fed by wax, but by the last trace of heat in the air around it. Let it flicker, let it dim. It has done its work. It carried you here, it held the baton. It kept the orchestra together through every movement, every transition, every passage from noise to silence. And now its work is done. And the silence it has earned is the most complete silence there is. You are safe. You are whole. You are gone. You are here. Rest now.